I swim every day at the pool by my house.
I lent him mine. So Bitcoin took a little dip here, back to our previous high, like right to the nose, and then bounced up. This is on the 30.
Yeah.
This is on the 30-minute chart. So this is a kind of an existing trend line that was holding price until it broke through, on the 20th. Then we moved up, and that was kind of what I was looking for, was to break out of this bigger price channel, which we kind of poked out of here. But I think because of the fork and all that stuff, people are going to still consolidate. I still think it's going to be a bear market for altcoins. So I think ultimately we haven't seen this scenario yet. The last fork, people kind of freaked out, and it price dropped off over here. Then after the fork, it climbed. But this time, I think people see that forks aren't the end of the world, so you're better to be in Bitcoin and get your allocation of the other fork. So
Yeah, and you describe altcoins as any coin but Bitcoin.
yeah, so anything, from the big boys like Ethereum and Litecoin down to, some of the there's smaller ones like, 0x, or any of those Ethereum based ERC20 tokens. I mean, the whole thing's getting hammered, and I just think that's just people are focusing on being in front of that fork in Bitcoin. After that, I think we rotate out of that back into altcoins. But it's just an altcoin bear market right now.
Yeah, I shorted Ethereum against my Bitcoin yesterday into this morning, and it gave it. It's a nice way to hedge. If you're worried that the Bitcoin might go down a little bit, overnight I just shorted it against Ethereum, and it actually paid me, so I was pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, most anything right now, as soon as it just pops, you can just short it. Um, Looking at Factum here, I mean, it'll pop up here, just get shorted. Any sign of strength right now just gets shorted. So
Yeah, and then I shorted Stellar based on your recommendation, Phil, and that paid me 4 times this week. Just amazing.
yeah, so these
And just
are,
so you got too, Phil in the room, he doesn't put all this stuff out, but that's why you got to be in the trading room. Is um, you know, Phil calls out some of these what they call them ratio trades. You own Bitcoin, and you can short other things against it, and you're making money on the spread expanding. So that was pretty sweet. So I really appreciate it because I'm over on the future side, so I can't play over in your sandbox. So I really appreciate you calling that out on those big moves on those small cap coins.
yeah. So here's a chart of Stellar. This is a 4-hour chart, but I mean, look, it's like none of these. This is the IBM announcement when they said they were going to partner with Stellar, for blockchain stuff, which was just kind of like a letter of intent, really. I mean, it wasn't. We haven't seen anything really material from that. So of course, that's a news hype jump. But in this market, those are just things that are just going to kind of pay, and you had to kind of, it wasn't instantaneous. You kind of had to pick your spot, but did pay off. But that's just the market we're in right at the moment. But we don't blindly just short. We wait for certain things to happen, which is what we talk about in the room too. So
Yeah, and when we talk about how we trade this too, I'll show somebody the the stellar chart where if you were short, where you wanted to cover or flip long, even outside of the signal, because the nice thing about the crypto world is it trades like a futures contract in the sense that it really behaves well technically, and because you can't leverage this any more theoretically than 2 to 1, you get a more pure sine wave kind of trading, which you show in your channels, and the coin by creating into the futures market, into the crypto market, it just makes it really, really, I don't want to call it easy to trade, but easy to recognize the trades. So,
yeah, like here, we fired off. This was one iteration that we have of the signal, but it fired off here short, and look at that, took it down, and then now we're firing long and back up. But the one, Bob, you're going to show, I think, is the long only, right?
Yeah, I'm going to show the long only one.
You want to throw that up now, or?
Yeah, and I'll show you actually. Yeah, let me do that. Hold on a sec.
Your camera moved a little bit.
Yeah, I moved my PC so I could see. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. And let me know when I'm back.
Okay, you're back. So let's switch. We're going to switch over to Bob's screen here. There we go.
Okay, so one thing I want to show you on Stellar is, one thing you have to bear in mind in just trading 101, the IBM announcement was here, and everybody that had inside information was here. So you started seeing, and our signal is, it looks at trend and momentum. So it was picking up on, a change in trend. And you take the long only signal, you don't think about it, you set a stop, underneath it if you're concerned. But you had the moving average going our way, you had the momentum signal coming our way, and this area here is a pivot, and then you started seeing it come up on the pivot, and then this was the announcement. And this is what Phil's talking about too. When you get these big candles and then these big wicks, these are opportunities, especially when you get a second one that fails, to come down. But if you were short, if you notice here, it's a little light because I don't like to clutter my screen, but this is kind of a volume shelf here and here and here, and price held here. So if you were long and you're practicing just trailing it, you probably would have got out here. If you're aggressive, you probably did some shorting. But for sure, if you're here and you're short, you want to take profit because it's hitting a volume thing here, and it's still technically long. Nothing violated our long only signal here yet, and Bitcoin is even more pure. And the more volume a coin has, the more valid our signal is, because you're going to get bigger moves because you have more liquidity coming in. But Phil was interesting because we had the long only signal here. You could see there was a turn even from down here at this point here, and our system's not designed to try to catch bottoms. It's trying to catch what we call the middle 60, so that you're basically driving with the trend, and that protects you in terms of your drawdowns are a lot less. And because if it was a fake out move, this would show an exit pretty quickly again, and you just get out and wait. And then, but once this trade starts to go, our exit signal will fire once it sees that the momentum is falling off, and you'll get an exit signal on it, like you'll see here. And this is a classic example of, you get in a trade, and it's not quite ready for prime time, it gets you right out of the trade. And that's okay. This thing tests out at about 70%, but anything north of 55% on trading is good. What you want to do is you want to let your winners run, and you want to cut your losses off quickly, and that's how we designed this. And so now this thing's just driving up, and here's a volume shelf here that that Phil kind of alluded to on his 30-minute, and then here's support here again. So depending on how aggressive you are or how patient you are, if you're very patient, you can just let this exit it out if you wanted to. And I'm referring to people who aren't stacking the coins. If you're stacking, then you can ignore anything I say here because you're buying it for the collapse of the fiat world. But if you're trading or if you want to get in half, get out half kind of a thing, more like what I do, is that you're looking for the exit signal, or you're looking for it maybe to break down below these volume shelves, because then it's probably going to drop down to the next one. So that's that. And you can see this works really well. Ethereum, the same. See, you got a long only signal here, and it just couldn't carry the day, so it's getting you out. And then one thing that Phil does, and I do as well, is once you get two good points on the low side or the high side, if it violates at this point too, it's okay to close a trade out if you're trading it. You don't have to wait for the signal, and so this gave us a good exit. And I referred to this the other day. You're getting in here at 293. You're getting out at 315. You're making 4 or 5% in a week. That's nothing to sneeze at. And then Litecoin, same thing. If you're in Litecoin, I do this because it's the last hammer here, but you got a buy signal here. It's still on a buy signal, okay? And again, you can use, and it's still above the volume shelves. So if you're trading this, and you're doing it the right way, you should not be out of your Litecoin. And so if I'm saying anything you want to say differently, just interrupt me. But this is from my own personal perspective. And then
yeah, you're I mean, technically it still hasn't said to exit yet. So if you're swinging long, personally, if you get a pop, you're taking the majority of the position off. So on that pop up there to 70ish, that would have been like you're taking, if this is for swing trading, you would be taking a majority of the position off there and then letting it run. And then if you price got back to your entry point, you just go flat at that point. You'd get out of the trade on the remaining amount.
yeah, you never want to, if you're making money, you never want to give the money back. So you could trail it, or like Phil says, you get a momentum move like this, especially when you get a move like this, like what happened in Stellar. I mean, this is like, thank you God, right? And as soon as you start seeing this thing start to wick, just get out. If you like to trade this thing, then you can wait and take it again right here if you wanted to, and Ripple kind of moved into their conference, and the conference wasn't that exciting in terms of the trader's perspective, but you got in here at 20, and it got you out, but it double topped here at 30, and you got to kind of know your see if you're trading this thing here. So it put a double top in, and the smart traders started taking money off the table here, and if not here, and then if this flag broke here. So there's different ways in which you just manage your position. This is not an auto trade system, so it's looking for the best area to get in and then manage your profit on the way out.
Right.
Yeah. There's some questions. Let me look here. Liberty asked if we would buy Bitcoin right now. Gabe, no, I use TradingView for the coins. I don't think Thinkorswim even shows them. Yeah, people are asking for your outlook, Phil, on Bitcoin here.
All right, let me go switch to the chart. All right, so we're looking at a 4-hour Bitcoin chart, and basically, what I was looking at was that we came up to this price channel, and as has been happening, when we hit it, we move off of it. On this particular run up, though, because of the fork, I was expecting that we would maybe pull back a little bit, but then we're going to poke out of this channel. And Bitcoin has the habit of poking out of established price channels quite a bit. So, we could see if we ran up and saw high sixes, even maybe to 7,000, I think that's not outside the realm of impossibility. I think at that point we'd be really extended though, and we'd probably be looking at a 20 to 30% pullback if we just ran up there like how we're doing. What's interesting is that it seems like the foreign markets tend to kind of give us a tone for the week. So watch Sunday night. If you start seeing buying in the Asian market open and the London markets, then that's probably going to be another bullish week. Being that we had such a huge weekly candle, those typically tend to signal that we're going to go a lot higher. Not a lot higher, but we have maybe 2 to 3 more weeks. This is a really big weekly candle, probably one of the biggest ones we've ever had. Here was another one, and here was another one. When you, as you can see, when you get a big weekly candle like that, 1, 2, 3 weeks of higher prices followed, then we hit that upper channel. I think we do poke out of this channel, though. We already did a little bit, but I think we're going to see possibly a couple weekly closes above it. And then I would probably be looking at, we're either going to consolidate or keep grinding higher into the fork. Now, the reason why that's happening with the fork is because I think what we saw with Bitcoin Cash, and we kind of went over this last week, was that people were a little bit fearful of the fork. And so what happened was they went ahead and I think we saw a little bit of flight to safety out of Bitcoin. But after the fork was done, so we saw price decline, then the fork happened, and then boom, away we went. But what happened was people that had kept their Bitcoin allocation got Bitcoin Cash, so they were able to cash out and get free Bitcoin. And I think this time now people are seeing that forks are kind of part of the growth process. I don't think there's going to be another large one as contentious as this one, because this one's kind of the most controversial, although I don't think the 2x crowd is going to win out on this. I think it's going to go the way of Bitcoin Cash, and I think ultimately it'll fizzle out. But people want to be hedged, so to me it appears that we're just consolidating into Bitcoin. People that have holdings in altcoins are getting out of them, and the money's flowing, or even new money coming in is just focused on Bitcoin. After the fork, once you get your snapshot of the blockchain and you have your allocation of 2x coins and you have your Bitcoin coins, I think at that point people will start to look at redeploying back out into alts, and then the bear market of alts will probably start to bottom out. So I think it's an interesting situation. If we didn't have the fork ahead of us, I would say, probably, wait for a pullback. This is a daily chart, and like this dip was really quick, back down about 5,100, a little lower actually, and then popped back up, popped off this moving average here. It's like they're just there waiting, and it was just a really quick correction, and so we might see that behavior up until the fork. So whereas other times maybe the correction took a little longer. So you have to be kind of quick, but I would say that under normal circumstances, I'm not a buyer at these levels, especially when like your RSI is elevated as it is here. Your stoke is kind of rolling over, but that doesn't mean when we're in a situation like this crossover that we're seeing here could push this higher for another week or two. We had a cross here back on the 6th, and it just continued to grind a lot higher. So, and you can see the stoke was elevated, but we crossed. And so our price here was 4,300, and now we're pushing up into 6,100. So that's almost a $2,000 move, even though your stoke was elevated. So when you get into these bull runs, things can stay embedded above these normally overbought or oversold levels. They can just stay embedded up here. So it's a different way to interpret the technicals, but sometimes you just have to recognize the environment you're in too. So hard to say. I mean, you could leg in at these levels and expect it to continue to grind higher towards 7,000, and then I think we pull back. But you have to keep your powder dry. I think after the 2x fork, I think we're going to get a little bit of a pullback and like I said, a redeployment into the altcoins. So that would be my 4-week, 5-week outlook from here.
Yeah, and one thing too is when you're looking at stochastics, and what I look at is if it's embedded like it is, and especially if you're getting a good move like this, if stochastics stay above 60, even though they're crossing each other, it really portends more consolidation than selling. It just depends on, if you're going to want to trade it more aggressively, then you step down to an hourly chart and look for entries and exits. The only problem with cryptos is that a lot of these moves happen overnight and they'll leave you behind. And so that's what we like to look at a daily and use multiple indicators to to get us out. And you can always scale out too. But I agree with Phil. I think if you look at 6,800, it's kind of a Sornet wave kind of ending area from the move that started in 2015. And so you should expect at least 1/3. You can be in a bull market on Bitcoin and have this thing retrace 2/3 of its move from the beginning of the run, just to give you perspective on how these things can work. I'm not suggesting any of that's true, because what we don't know is we don't know what's going on behind the scenes at the sovereigns. I think Bitcoin is getting bid like it's getting, because there are people that are behind the scenes that are bad mouthing it publicly, but privately, they're buying, because China's expected to do a huge devaluation, and Trump does not want a strong dollar, and the Japanese have been very transparent in terms of trying to crash the yen, and the Europeans don't want a strong currency. So at some point, there's only so many places where this excess liquidity can go, and they've been suppressing gold because that's probably most people's barometer of inflation, and they've been very lucky because there's been an abundance of food and energy. So the money's moving out of the banking system and into these coins, and with Bitcoin being quote unquote the gold standard. So technicals are playing out really well, but you just don't know. Like you see, every dip is being bought aggressively. I mean, this is amazing. Hammer here. You think after a 30% move, you think you'd get a good test back, but this was what, Phil, maybe 2 hours, and this thing was back already going again. It was like amazingly. So, but for me, since I trade more than stack these, I'm a little nervous at these levels. But if you're a stacker, what's 6,000 when you think it's going to go to 23 or 25,000 in the next 2 years?
Yeah, I think 25,000 to me is kind of like the I would say one of the major mile markers for it, and I think all of the technicals are in place. It's just a matter of time, and the other thing you have to think about too is that the institutional money flows haven't started yet into Bitcoin. Well, actually, they've started, but not on the level that is going to take this thing much, much higher. But that's going to start to transpire, and especially in 2018. So yeah, I still think we're probably looking at hitting that 10K mark in the first quarter of 2018, and then I think it'll be interesting if we I don't know, 25,000 it would be probably at this point aggressive to see for next year, but it's not impossible. There's a lot of different factors in play, but I do think we get there. I think we're definitely there by 2019 at some point.
Yeah, I mean, you just temper your expectations. You're buying these coins to really protect wealth outside the banking system. So, let's say it just goes up 20 or 30% a year. I mean, which is incredible in and of itself. So, to get doubles and doubles, which is really what kind of Phil's putting on the table here. Hey, we may correct back down to the high 4s, and then you're looking to a move to 10. They may correct back down again, and then a move up into the mid-20s. Those things are very normal. And one thing you have to really realize with cryptocurrency is that it's not the cryptos that are necessarily rising in value. It's the value of the coin, of the realm against it. People are abandoning it. And if we lose the petrodollar standard, there's no need for people to own dollars. and you're going to have excess dollars being dumped onto the market. Can you imagine what that'll do, to the price of cryptos? I mean, obviously other things too. Anything commodity related will move, but people will be pouring themselves into these non-bank coins to protect themselves against potential dollar crash, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, with you can't print all this money that they're printing, which is floating the stock market, and not start having inflation problems. So I think crypto, Bitcoin in particular, is an excellent hedge against that, and probably what's going to fuel some of the crazy valuations that we do see. I think it does go to six figures. I think whether that's 2020 or 2021, but I think we do see that.
Yeah, I mean the cryptos are the most pure, the most pure form of trading right now because they can't counterfeit to suppress it like they do with the paper gold market. So I think the cryptos are telling us a bigger story than just the cryptos in and of itself, and because they can't suppress it, and at some point you'll start seeing the commodities moving along with it as well, especially on the precious metal side when inflation really goes. But this one will move the fastest. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys have any questions before maybe we're going to shift gears to maybe natural gas a little bit? But I just want to say you guys can buy this software now. We had a special running for people that are already crypto customers that you get to use it for the rest of the year at no charge. But for those who are not, you can actually buy this access to this software for in TradingView, and it's 50% off the list price. So you just have to ask customer service when you sign on, and you can buy it. But if you're already a crypto customer, just send it in to me. Phil will validate that you're a client, and we'll give you access to it. And then going into 2018, we'll determine whether or not we'll charge for it or not. So I'm not sure yet. But it's a really good tool, and we want to get more and more tools into your hands so that you can become a better trader and you can follow things that we just can't possibly follow everything. So.
Did you want to show them? We got a few more people online. You want to show them real quick, kind of the couple different instruments?
You mean different coins?
Yeah, with the signal.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go through it again. So if you see here, you would have got in on Bitcoin in around 4,200. It's still a buy, and depending on how you manage your position, I mean, even the most basic, there's not even been a change in trend on the 18 moving average, which is the 8 moving average, which is just incredible. That's how strong this move has been, and Ethereum, you had a nice trade here, and it signaled out here, and so and that reflects back what Phil's saying, and then I followed a support line, and everything got out around the same area here. Litecoin's still a buy, and you would have bought in here, and right here, this is still a 10% move, but Phil brought up the point where if you get a move like this and it's pushing up away from the moving average, it takes them off the table so that you can ensure that you're going to make profit on the trade, and then when you get an exit signal, you just get out the rest of the way and wait for another buy. But Litecoin's consolidating very, very well. It's not giving up the ghost. It's holding its own while everybody pours into Bitcoin.
Yeah, if you were to kind of pull back out on a daily chart, I mean, it's a really healthy chart. I think everybody gets frazzled on it because it's not it doesn't see the explosive moves all the time that Bitcoin more consistently has more explosive moves. Litecoin certainly has explosive moves. I mean, we made 100. It's made several hundred triple-digit moves on its run up, but we will go through a period of 1 to 2 months where it seems like it's just consolidating, even though it's kind of marching higher. And so it's just a different animal. But I think like I've said before, I think as we get out past this fork, 2x fork and stuff like that, and we see altcoin money flowing back into the altcoin space, I think that's when you'll probably see another run back into triple digits for Litecoin. But it's a really healthy chart, though.
Yeah, and if you look here, I mean, this is a 50% move. Even if you waited for the signal to get out, for me, if you hit a pivot area or you hit areas of resistance, you typically take some off the table if not out. But this is a 50% move. This here, if you waited for the signal, I mean, this move here was another 50% move, and here you have 10%. So you would have made 100% on Litecoin just following the signals alone, and not even managing it. Which you would do whenever you get these big green candles like this. You always want to probably take a little bit off the table because you just don't know if it's going to reverse on you or not. And then even some of the smaller ones, let's zip in here. Here's a stellar move we talked about before. You would have been positioned for this big move, and what Phil would have told you if you would have been in stellar and been talking about how much money you made, he probably would have been telling you to probably take some money off the table here. And in fact, he recommended even shorting it at these levels, which I followed his advice on and made money over 2 or 3 days last week. And then when it hit this volume ledge, then I figured I squeezed enough out of the rock. And then I think Phil's talking about altcoins like Neo. See, Neo is just sitting here waiting. We don't have enough. We don't have enough data points yet for it on the crypto for the look back, but just looking at it from a standpoint is that it still has some weakness to go through, and if you get the ending of the fork, I think Phil said this will get more interesting to you. And I'm going to flip this. You actually want to look at Neo Dollar to Bittrex, because I don't think anybody here could trade Bitfinex anyway. They're closing it down for US, right, Phil?
Bitfinex, yeah. They do have a decentralized exchange built on the 0x protocol, which is 0x is a ERC token that's you can buy, and you'll need them to burn for transaction fees. But I think that's where this is all headed. But they are creating a decentralized exchange called ETHEREUM. It isn't ready yet, but it's built on the 0x platform, which I think, personally, I think you probably want to, even though we're in a bear alt market, you probably want to get some 0x coins, because I think definitely has the potential to be, what you would consider the de facto standard going forward. I think decentralized exchanges are the future. Right now we have centralized exchanges, but I think you're going to see them probably all start deploying a decentralized version of themselves just to keep up with the tech. But that has a huge potential because, I mean, trading is monstrous, right? So if you're burning 0x tokens, that's what you want to see on an altcoin that you want to get into. You want to see it, you want to see it get used, not just buying shares of something. So that's a pro tip, but I think that's kind of going off the tracks a little bit. But yeah, Bitfinex is going away for U.S. customers, and ETHEREUM will will be accessible for U.S. customers because it's decentralized.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the kind of stuff, if you're not a crypto trader with us, this is the insight that you get as part of being part of the service. So, I mean, it's just pure gold. And what we charge to have access to the software, the courses, or even access to the room is it's undervalued. You're getting the better end of the deal, and so the just amount of money that you can make from just the other traders and Phil's insight is just amazing. So I'm going to shift gears. Just talk Litecoin for a second. I mean, I personally like Litecoin because I think it's the transaction costs are lower, and I think Charlie Lee's building out a really nice network that retailers and peer-to-peer can trade on it very inexpensively and very quickly. And I think it'll be one of the survivors, end of the day, there's 800 coins out there, and in 2 years there's probably gonna be 20. Just because you get to see what the secular players are doing, they're going to be adopting blockchain and shared ledger technology, but they're going to try to run it off their centralized databases. And that's going to help them in the sense that it's going to help them run their businesses more efficiently. But you're not going to, a lot of these coins that are being created right now are just not going to have a reason for being unless they're very nichey. And so command the pre Litecoin is kind of like the silver standard, and Ethereum slash Neo is like the Intel Inside. And then what Phil's talking about, whoever has the coins for these decentralized exchanges are going to do really well, because that's what's going to keep the sovereigns out of everybody's pocket, or preventing people from even getting involved in these in the first place, because your exchange is not sitting in the state of Washington where you can't, you're under their regulatory thumb. You just need a smartphone and internet access, and your exchange is anywhere in the world, not outside of the regulatory capture of any individual sovereign state. So that's how I at least look at the world from a macro standpoint. And then when we talk stocks, I think anybody that has centralized databases are going to be in big trouble, or if they have slow transfer of assets. And so you're looking at anywhere from the MasterCard, Visa, American Express, PayPal. Those guys are all in trouble. Their business models are going to be severely constrained. And then anything like escrow companies or title companies, the cost of doing business with them are going to plummet, because everything's going to be sitting transparent on a ledger. You can search them yourself. And so it's going to wipe out a whole nother generation of people who've been controlling information, centralizing it, and then selling it for their benefit because they have it. It's going to be all out in the open. And then you're going to include, agriculture reports, any government data, all that stuff's going to be out in the open, and the government can't control or massage them or use their analytical tools to paint a picture, because everybody's going to see the data and have access to the data immediately. So that's kind of my view, and so I just it's here to stay. The cream will rise to the top. I think Phil always talks about, we're kind of in 98 to 2000, and then we'll have, internet, 1.0 will have the failures, and then we'll go into internet 2.0 kind of for cryptos, where the cream will rise, and there'll be another set of technology coming up, and then we'll get a breath of fresh air. But make no mistake, the next 20 years, the world is going to go broke, and the sovereigns are going to debase their currencies to pay their debts. And so secularly, we're in good shape being in the cryptos.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I was watching a show the other day, and kind of was going over the .com bubble, which I don't think we're anything near yet. But what's similar is all the ICOs look a lot like the IPO hype, and maybe not on a as far as the amount of money going into this space, because the .com boom was like a $6 trillion bubble. We're nowhere near that, but I forgot the names that were really popular back in '99, and you just forget about them. But they were like all the rage, and people were making money. But ultimately, they went to zero, or they got consumed by something else. So, and that's the tricky part of all this, is what's going to be around in the next 10 years. You get that right, and you're going to be probably set for life. And that's not a joke. But with 800 different alt cryptos out there, it's quite a bit to navigate through. So that's and that's another thing that we spent a lot of time doing and researching is what's out there and what's viable. So again, it's talked about constantly in the room and stuff like that. So if you haven't been into this space yet, or you're looking to get into crypto, I think you get the package, and you get basically the run through on the courses, and then you get the basically the knowledge base of people that are in the room, people that are trading, and then us in there, and you can always ask questions. It's a really good guidebook to get you set up as far as not spending or not investing on stuff that's just not going to be around in a year. And there's going to be a ton of that, and there's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars lost. I mean, look at this Tezos ICO, right? That was probably one of the biggest ones, and it's falling apart. And they're talking about class action lawsuits. But again, you have to look at the team. You have to look at what they're doing. Tezos wasn't really one that was on my radar at all that I was looking at. I just didn't think that it was one that had shown that it had the chops to stick around. And we do have several of those that we do focus on. So anyway, just some food for thought if you're wanting to dip your toe into the crypto waters, that you'll find the service pretty beneficial.
Yeah, and there's a question about the exchange. Well, for the crypto money machine, we did it in TradingView because I think you just have to buy the lowest level to get access to the crypto coins, which is $14 a month. That's not us. That's the TradingView charge.
Yeah.
And then which is dirt cheap for the software. It's pretty incredible. And then you will have access to the cryptos. And the day trading money machine that we have is on Thinkorswim, and right now we're working with our programmer to design an equivalent in TradingView. And some things aren't equivalent, which is just amazing to me. I used Telechart for years and years and years, and people could never recreate my signal in Telechart, even though you think the calculations are the same. But for whatever reason, they don't align. And same with Thinkorswim going to TradingView. So we're spending time now to get something that is equivalent to it, so that we can put all our software going forward out into TradingView, and then have that as a package, not only day trading but swing trading the equities, so that you have an additional tool besides myself or Phil calling out trading opportunities, because we can only follow so many trades, and you don't want me to be using a filter and calling out 30 or 40 buy signals a day. It just overwhelms you. So if you like something that we don't follow, you'll have the software to be able to get good areas to buy and good areas to close the trades out. So that's kind of where we are. Let's see here. Yeah, and Lauren, that's what Phil does with I only participated in one ICO. But I'm building wealth alongside how Phil's recommending people to build wealth. You get a core position, and then you add in, and either you add by stacking or you add by taking some off the table and buying at the next buy area. So that's the best way to go. And for me, if it's not Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoin, at least getting started, then I'd ask Phil if you want to get in some other coins in the room. And let's see here. After Feb 20th, no. Yeah, that's an algorithm, Gabe, where people are talking about an awareness factor, and that's a marketing thing. So you have to have awareness before you have action. And so what they're saying now is like 2% of the world now has enough awareness of cryptocurrencies, and that then begets purchasing. And you get to 3%, then you start moving into another realm of adoption. And I think I think you were telling me, Phil, if not, you let me know that March, April is when a lot of the institutional guys are going to be ready to take on clients, and so that dovetails pretty nicely. And they're not going to do these unless they have opportunities for multi-billion dollars worth of asset growth.
Yeah. Actually, let's do this. So what that referenced was it took about, and this is Coinbase, so they don't go back all the way, but they go back to 2015. But when they introduced trading or purchasing of Bitcoin, we were already at triple digits. So this is in the beginning of 2015, and at that point, Bitcoin was out in the wild since 2009. But 2009 there was very few people that even were participating in Bitcoin, and then it really kind of started becoming a niche in 2010. But it was basically saying that to get to 1% of global saturation, as far as people, knowing about cryptos, the global consciousness, if you will, took about 8 years. And then so that got us to somewhere in 2016, and then price was about double. But then in 2016 to 2017, we went from 1% to 2%. Okay. And then now, because of just the way that's going to create exponential growth, so you're going to take 8 years to get to 1%, something like a little less than a year to get to 2%. Now you're talking like a couple months to weeks to start jumping these multiples, so 3, 4, 5%. And that's when you start seeing that, you're going to start seeing a lot more flows. Never mind the money from the institutions, which is going to be huge, but you really haven't even tapped into money from just global GDP. You just haven't done that yet. And here we are already pushing past 6,000. So it's not really to me, it's not really, you're in the early adoption stage of this still yet. And the thing I was telling somebody was like, you could think of them as early Berkshire, that's Warren Buffett's, Series A shares. They don't have a lot of them. They haven't diluted the stock, so they're worth six figures. I don't know what they are today, but they're well over $100,000. So you can think of Bitcoin in the same way, because there's such a finite amount. There's never going to be more. You can only buy fractions. So like today, if you went to go buy a Berkshire Hathaway share, you're probably buying most likely you're buying a fraction, unless you're buying six figures worth of this stuff. But the same thing is going to hold true for Bitcoin. So it's kind of exciting, because if you grasp what's going on, you grasp this concept, then what you're going to see is like, well, this thing's just going to follow this trajectory. We're going to be in a couple years out, we're going to be in well into 5 figures. So you're in a time still where it's feasible for somebody, an individual that has some savings, to be able to purchase one Bitcoin. That's going to go away pretty fast here. And, if you do know somebody who owns one Bitcoin down the road, that's going to be like an amazing thing. But the majority of the planet's going to own a fraction of a Bitcoin. And if you own multiple Bitcoins, you're going to be in the 1% of crypto, which is I think going to be huge for you as far as personal, wealth building. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then there'll be a special like trip to Tahiti for the one crypto crowd.
I think we're planning to in a couple of years, for the guys that are in the room now, we'll do a retreat somewhere.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So here's when you know to get out of the cryptos. When Barron says that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and when we have the first crypto Super Bowl ad.
Yeah, Bitcoin Bowl.
Yeah, I'm just I'm joking, but that's when you know it's in the zeitgeist of the consciousness.
Well, yeah, and I think too. I mean, again, I think we're kind of in the dial-up modem phase, and the growth is going to be exponential on this. But I don't think we're anywhere near where it starts getting super toppy, and then we go into a secular bear market in crypto, and that's minimum of 5 years, and probably more like 8 to 10 years out. So right now is the time to be starting to get into this stuff. And the governments can say what they want. You're never going to stop a decentralized application. Otherwise, the internet would have been throttled already. There wouldn't be anything such as the dark web, which continues. The simple fact of the matter is, you can't stop something that's decentralized. So, and they know that. So what they're going to do is, they're not going to fight it, because it's something. Do you fight something that's unenforceable, or do you go to the regulation route and tax it and go that route? And that's what they're going to do, and that's what they're already doing. And you have countries already committing that it's a legal currency, like Japan. And I think Australia is almost there. And there's some other countries. There's actually quite a few countries internationally that have recognized it as legal tender. So you've already started that process. So it's
and Australia stopped double taxation. That's why I laugh when they said America will shut it down. I'm like, well, they can. Then all the wealth will leave America. So they had a chance to kill us at the crib 10 years ago, and they didn't.
Yep.
So now it's too late. Hey, I got a question. The IB code is done. One of our subscribers wrote the DTMM in IB, And so I gave him the parameters with the understanding that he would share that with anybody who purchased DTMM. So I'll ask him for the code base, and if you already have the DTMM, I'll get that sent over to you so you can load it into IB. So I wanted to shift gears, if it's okay, if people are interested, is that we have a really neat opportunity for minimum 10%, likely 20% move in natural gas. And I wanted to go back and show you what typically happens. So let me go back here to last October. Did I go back too far? Let's see, here we go. Yeah, I did. Sorry about that. Okay, so I was already there. So last year we had you always get a push in the spring on natural gas, and it's interesting just trading in general, and is that you don't have to be in everything to make money. If you get really good at certain things, like Phil is the de facto expert on cryptos, and that's where he spends most of his time, although he trades in the equity markets and the binary markets. But, energy trades fairly freely too. Even though it's manipulated, it's just so big that there are opposing forces. There's some people that want it to go down. There's some people that want it to go up, and they're both equally powerful, which basically negates the manipulation to an extent. And so, you have these moves in the spring into summer on natural gas higher, and then you get these I don't know what I'm doing there. Then you get these pops, which is basically the big money getting themselves positioned short, what they call the shoulder move, and that happens in September and October. And then you get these nice, beautiful, really short period of time, 20% moves, especially when you have a La Nina year being forecasted. So last year they forecasted a La Nina year. You got the 20% move, and then when they got into December and had the storage lined up, and they realized that things weren't as going to be cold, move, which happened again, which brings us to today. Again, what I do here? Sorry. They're forecasting a La Nina year again, and so you had a small push up in the in the move here, but this sold off pretty hard, and now we have another hammer here at the end of October, and we have a falling wedge, and so we're positioned. I've been buying UNG all this week, and I have two natural gas contracts long. My expectation is for this to get to the pivot. Once it gets on the other side of the pivot, break this wedge, and then break this channel, and then it's going to look to move back to the highs here, 350, 360. But there's some people actually even calling for $4. So you're looking at 20% move minimum in natural gas, and if you buy futures, this is a 350% move. And if you're buying UGAS, you're looking at a 250% move from this move here. $20 to $50. That's a 2.5% move, and then UNG is a $1.20 to a $1.50 move. So if you're more conservative, and so there's some tremendous opportunities here coming up on the natural gas side. And what's really nice about this is once this move happens and we see it rolling over, we'll get a sell signal on it, and then you'll be able to ride it right back down into February. And so there are possibilities. Everybody talking about the stock market being a bull market, but a SPY move that looks like this is not exciting, for a trader. This is just a grind, okay? You're talking 15% since the beginning of the year. Phil made that over the last week. When you catch these good moves in some of these future seasonals, you're talking, 100% plus moves. So I wanted to bring natural gas to your attention. So, between now and right before Christmas, I'd be looking for every opportunity to buy nat gas. And then once the Fed doesn't raise interest rates in December, then we're going to get a big move in the metals and miners into the beginning of the year. And then you're going to be able to short natural gas going into the first quarter. So here's some really nice trades to make a lot of money with very little capital, and to really juice your portfolio. You buy UGAS here. This is amazing. Let's say you bought 1,000 shares. The worst you can lose, even if you bought 1,000 shares, is $10,000. The worst. And you have a chance to 250%, gain on that. And so those are the kind of opportunities that we like to point out on the ETF room. And so I've been banging the table on that. I trade it on the intraday too, so I'm always adding contracts and taking contracts off, so I keep moving my price down. And we use the DTMM for that. But beyond that, I'll call out the trades in the ETF room. So I just wanted to tell you guys, natural gas here's a free trade opportunity for you guys. So take advantage of it, make some money.
Looking at the comments, Liz, yeah, the Russians. I think what the Russians are going to do, I think, is they've set it up where only the kind of the upper crust in the financial realm there are going to probably benefit from crypto. They've already stated that they're going to do like their own state-backed cryptocurrency, which I think all governments ultimately are going to do. Why wouldn't you, right? But it doesn't change the fact that they're controlling the monetary supply, and they're still printing at will. They're just making it digital. So instead of paper dollars, you've got digital dollars, and there's going to be, that's not. I don't like that personally, because I'd like, you want to have your cash to spend how you please, and if you digitize all of that, especially when it's state run, then everything's trackable. So there's kind of that big brother element, which I think people are gonna fight. In Russia, you're not gonna fight it because it's communist, but over here, I think it'll be complementary to cash for that reason. But yeah, Russia can't like stop Bitcoin again because it's decentralized, but they can. The only thing they can do is curb how you would convert it to your local currency. That's really all they can do. But as far as storing a value or moving assets around, there's no way to stop it because it's in the blockchain. So the blockchain exists on the internet, and the internet's not going anywhere, and neither is blockchain. So you just can't regulate it.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about Russia anyway, because the Ukraine's not going to restrict it, Finland's not going to restrict it, Poland's not going to restrict it, Georgia is not going to restrict it, Armenia is not going to restrict it, Greece is not going to restrict it, and these people will just take a vacation and convert their rubles into euros, go to an exchange that'll be decentralized, like what Phil talked about. They're not going to ask any questions about where you live. They're going to take your money. You're going to buy a Bitcoin. You're going to go home, and you're going to get on your smart coin and your smartphone and watch or trade it. And then if you need the money again, you take another trip. You sell out. You take your euros or whatever. You convert it back to rubles, and you have more money. So I think it's a fantasy that these people have that I think they're going to find that it's like trying to store water into a sieve.
And you're going to have countries too. The other shoe that hasn't fully dropped, but I think it's starting to, is places like Argentina, where their monetary supply is just, it's out of control, and they're looking at hyperinflation, and they're falling apart. But they're starting to, you're starting to see stories of where the guys on the street are starting to segue into Bitcoin, because it's a more stable store of value. And I think you may see some of these smaller nations go through these episodes, and that's where you're going to see a ton of influx into the Bitcoin space, because the local currency is just hyperinflating away.
Yeah, and then Steve, you had a question. What we do is we send everything out on Twitter, so it's time stamped. But if you want to have access to it, you buy a 10-day trial, and then you can look through the Twitter feed. We know we make people money, and we put enough public stuff out there. So if you want to go and kick the tires and look at all our past trades, they're time stamped on Twitter. We got in, we told people to get out, or at least we told them where a stop was, and you can either get a membership trial for the binary crypto room or for the ETF room. It's nothing. I think you get it for 50% off. I think for $10 you can get a 10-day membership and you can kick the tires. And there's other people that are on this site right now that are members, so they can tell you whether we're for real or not.
Awfully, yeah. That point, that question or the comment about Bitcoin ATMs. Yeah, I mean that's the easiest way to get into the space. Right now, because it's so immature, right, and it's kind of fledgling. It's hard to get people. When I work with people in the room or whatever, the hardest thing seems to be how do you get, how do you acquire Bitcoin? Like they want to have a Bitcoin by tomorrow. How do you do that? And that's really hard. Going to an ATM machine is probably the easiest way to do that because you can put in your money and you get your basically a paper wallet that gives you your allocation. The problem is that you pay a lot of premium for that service. And so it's not the most, it's not the cheapest way to go about acquiring Bitcoin. Going to the exchanges like Coinbase and things like that is much better. But there's a wait. And now Coinbase announced they're going to do instant purchase. So before that would only work with a debit card, and I think you were limited to $250 or $500 if you submitted the proper paperwork or information to get you verified higher. But still, you would have to wait several days. And so now they're going to roll out to everybody by the first of the year, I believe, that you'll be able to buy, whatever amounts that I think maybe it depends on your verification level, but you'll be able to buy larger amounts of Bitcoin and get it that same day. Now, if you want to take a chunk of money, like say you want to take a chunk of your 401k or whatever it is, your savings, say like 6 figures worth, they have a trading arm, Bitcoin does, called GDAX, GDAX, GDAX.com. That's their exchange. You can set up an account there. You can wire that amount of money over there. And, it takes a couple of days because it's bank transfer, but for it to clear on their end. But once it's cleared and folks in the room have done that, you are able to go ahead and purchase that amount of Bitcoin that you wired over in USD. So it's a little frustrating to see because a lot of people still have a hard time getting their Bitcoin. Coinbase delays are really high, but that is going away. So I think as this matures, and so by next year, there's a lot of this hardship of getting Bitcoin right away is going to go away. And
yeah, and I just bought one Bitcoin about almost 2 weeks ago, I guess. And it took 3 days for me to set the bank account up that they verified it, and then it took 5 days for them to validate that they had good and collected funds and gave me the coin. So, and that was right before they announced, and that's in Coinbase. So at least it's going to cut the ACH hold period on the Bitcoin down by almost half. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So anyway, anybody have any more questions? We'll wrap it up, and we'll reconvene next Saturday and look for some good topics. Hopefully, we'll have some good news on what's going on with the natural gas space, and then I think we'll get a better clarity going into the what's going on with all the forks on the crypto side, and we'll see if anything pops up from Ripple from. They had some announcements that they were expecting that didn't materialize, to see if that was just big rumors or if there's an opportunity there where some of the financial institutions are going to start adopting Ripple. So
yeah, I think the two rumors circulating, and One is American Express, that they're going to announce a partnership with Ripple. There's actually a internal email floating around that seems to be legit. The other one is Coinbase would be adding them to their portfolio of what you can purchase. So they'd be added to Coinbase, and an American Express announcement. Any of those two go official, we'll have another pop like we saw on Stellar. But if that happens before the fork, I think there's a propensity for this action here where we pop up and then we fall back down. So just keep that in mind with Ripple. Here's a long-term chart on Ripple, and this is like most every other altcoin. I mean, this is probably, you can pull up any daily altcoin chart and it's going to look very similar to this. Big run up in May when we had just bull market and everything, and then we kind of chilled out, but then everything just kind of started to peter out and now we're really rolling over, and this is going to continue, I think, for most everything until November 18th when we have the fork. Then it'll get interesting. But I think if you're going to nibble in these areas, you'll have to just hold your nose. And but I do think ultimately this stuff turns.
Yeah, John, we don't know with North Korea. It all depends. You know, the market, I think, pretty much discounted any strategic threat from North Korea. They literally will have to drop a nuke or accidentally hit Japan with a missile, I think, for it to be a market mover anymore. And like Phil's saying, I think between now and November, Bitcoin's to play. After November, probably look for some other opportunities.
Yeah, I think there's going to be. I have some strategies that I will share with the room as far as that goes after the 18th. But we really have to see what happens, like the few days following that. But to North Korea, I think, and I've said this before, I think what you're probably going to likely see is that when there's turmoil in the markets or there's instability, I think you're going to see equity flows into Bitcoin as a safe haven because it's geopolitically neutral. And so when you start seeing that precedent set, watch out, because this is going to rip and rip hard.
Well, good. Well, listen, hey, thank you. I appreciate everybody listening, and we'll be on next week. And if you're interested in anything we do beyond what you have already been involved with us, just hit us at TradeGeniusAcademy.com and talk to customer service and see if we can help you make money in any of the areas of trading, from futures to ETFs to binary options to cryptos. We have courses, and we have signals for all of those. And so with that, thank you, Phil. I really appreciate you hopping on with me today again.
Yeah, no worries. And if you guys have any ideas or you want us to discuss something next week, leave it in the chat, and we could probably cover it next week.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
All right,
See
guys.
you later.
Thanks.